Atwood, gerontologist, certified dementia practitioner, and certified laughter leader. And welcome back to our show. This is show number 2, where I promised our confident caregivers that we would talk about the 6 conditions that help people avoid a nursing home. And let me start by saying that sometimes people really do need nursing homes. For instance, if you have, for starters, you can't meet these 6 conditions. Obviously, that's a big part of it. But then more importantly, sometimes people need a short-term placement for rehabilitation after a hip repair or knee replacement, that sort of thing. But I wanted people to know the statistics that only about 5% of American elders live long-term in nursing homes. So 95% of the time, people are able to stay at home in the community. What we're going to be doing is continuing some of these discussions online, and we'll keep posting information and content in our show. In the meantime, while we're playing with this, obviously I need to upgrade some of my technology, and I'm working with some of our consultants on that to kind of help me get what is a better look. But in the meantime, I wanted to get this information out there because we started it, and I really want to make sure that you have the information that you want and need. Please do subscribe to this channel and let us know your feedback about what are the content areas that you want to know about. I'm your own personal care consultant here, and I'm happy to help answer your questions to meet your needs. From our first show, we did hear some information from one of our viewers who contacted me and said that they would like some more information as a caregiver for a family member with Lou Gehrig's disease or ALS. So we will, again, today, this information will help, and we'll keep going with some of the other content-related topic areas as we produce the show. So let's talk about, got my cheat sheets because my memory is not all that good. And that actually will be our next content, our next show will be about what are some of the differences between normal forgetfulness and other kinds of memory issues. So we'll talk about that next time. But let's talk about the 6 conditions to avoid a nursing home, or the 6 key elements, if you will. The first one is that an older adult has to be willing to accept services. And that's a big one. A lot of times older adults are reluctant to have a stranger living in their home or to be receiving care. They don't want to be dependent. They've always been fiercely independent. And that is actually something that can help promote a self-neglect, which is really a key risk factor for needing a nursing home. So having the ability to say, yes, I'm willing to accept the help, I need the care, let's work on a plan that is comfortable. You don't have to give up all independence, but accepting care does ultimately mean a loss of autonomy and privacy. So we as caregivers, as confident caregivers, need to recognize that that's an issue for some of our family members. So as people are aging and needing more help, that is the first condition. The second one is regarding finances. So those people who are extremely wealthy and those people who have absolutely nothing will probably be fine. The rest of us in the middle kind of get squeezed. One of the real challenges for a lot of clients is that they've saved and amassed a certain amount of wealth, but it's not enough to be completely independently wealthy, and therefore it costs money and they have to spend that money. Once they get to a certain point, they'll qualify for community-based, government-supported services. So a lot of times families are like, well, you know, mom's got some money, but if she spends it all, then there won't be any. When we are trying to stay out of a nursing home, that's called investing in your community-based living. So if we're talking about paying for a companion and homemaker to get her to her physician's appointments, or someone to make sure that there's appropriate food in the house and to do some meal preparation or monitor the medication compliance. Those are things that are good expenses to support or in order to keep someone out of a nursing home. The other challenge is that we need to pay money for the things that seem like luxury items, but may actually help someone avoid a nursing home. When I worked in case management, I could literally keep someone out of a nursing home by having them buy one of those automatic lift recliners. That can save a caregiver's back. That person can still be transferred and gotten from a sitting to a standing position mechanically. That's much safer than having to lift that person and risk the back injury to the caregiver. So that is, again, one of those things that it's important to spend on something that might seem like a luxury item. So finances is number 2. Number 3, you have to have a caregiver willing and able to be a backup plan. Now, if Uncle Joe lives 3 streets away, that may be wonderful, but if Uncle Joe is also taking care of his sick neighbor, the grandchildren after school, still working part-time, and has his own heart condition or something like that, he may be willing but not necessarily able to provide the level of support that your loved one needs. So we have to have a backup plan, even if they're willing to have caregivers come in. If the caregiver gets sick or there's an ice storm or something like that, what's the backup plan to make sure that your parent or the older adult can get the support that they need for their medication and whatnot. The 4th thing is about safety. Older adults are a protected class citizen. So what happens is anybody over age 65 is at risk for abuse, neglect, those sorts of issues. Then the state or some other kind of oversight agency needs to evaluate the person's ability to make an informed decision. Now that means a person may still have risky situations, but someone else is going to say it's okay. Let me give you a quick story, and I apologize if it seems like I'm racing through this, but I have so many stories and so many pieces of information that I want to share. I probably should have broken this up, but bear with me. I'll get used to this. One of my clients, when I was doing case management, this is in Connecticut, so a lot of times people think, oh, Connecticut, they've all got a lot of money. Well, not totally true. There's certainly a lot of wealth here in Connecticut, but there are a lot of people who live significantly below the poverty lines, and a lot of people who live in some conditions that other people, even in Connecticut, are pretty shocked about. So we had a client who was living in Eastern Connecticut who was renting a basement apartment where he didn't have a kitchen or anything like that. He had a hot plate and an outhouse. Now, in other parts of the country, especially in, maybe the Midwest or the Western, California areas, that might be okay. But in Connecticut, that's a danger. So unfortunately, this gentleman slipped and fell on the ice on his way to the outhouse one day and broke a hip. So as his case manager, it was my job to help take him from the hospital and then to the rehab, and then make a determination as to whether or not he could go home or if he needed a long-term care placement. So he was willing to accept home care services. He had almost no money, so that was okay. We could support him with community-based services. He had a caregiver who was willing to do some supervision, not live-in. He didn't need the live-in. He just needed, a bathroom. He needed to have less risk. So when we ever heard this guy has an outhouse and he was paying like $800 a month for a room and a hot pot, but it was a place where he could be independent and he could still have his dog. And back then, 15, 20 years ago, older adults weren't allowed. Assisted livings weren't here in Connecticut, and people certainly weren't encouraged to bring a dog into an assisted living. So, and even now here in Connecticut, we only have some demonstration projects where people have Medicaid supported assisted living. We don't have that here in Connecticut. So one of the things that's really important to recognize is that a person can make their own decisions, and if they're capable and consenting adults, the judge or whatever state oversight agency might look at that and say, it's not by my standards of what's acceptable or what is an appropriate living situation, but based on his abilities to make an informed decision. It's America. He gets the right to do that. So he was able to go home, and we did support his discharge home. And he did fine after that. He really did. We just made sure that the walk to the outhouse was clear of ice. Behaviors have to be managed, and this is one of the other things that needs to be addressed, is the issue of abuse. So not only are older adults sometimes at risk for abuse, and I mean physical, verbal, psychological, sexual, and then exploitation, financial exploitation, and neglect and self-neglect, as I've already mentioned. But sometimes they can also be abusive. So, and it's not necessarily with an intent to harm. It's more of a way of controlling or responding to a lack of control, really. So if someone is accepting of caregivers but punching the caregiver every time they get care, that's obviously not going to work. So people have a right to be minimized workplace violence. And those of us who do dementia care, we understand if someone gets hit, we've done something wrong, possibly. We need to look at that. However, if someone has ongoing behaviors that can't be managed, then that is going to be a nursing home likelihood is the next step. The last of our 6 conditions is about medication compliance. Oh, let me go back to the safety issues for a second. I talked about fall risks, but I didn't talk about some of the other safety issues. Wandering, leaving the stove on, having financial exploitation, letting strangers come in and make wild roof repairs and driveway paving scams. So those are other risk factors that put people at risk. So I wanted to go back to this other safety issues. So medications and basically having their care managed. Are the people taking their medications appropriately? Are they missing doses of insulin and now they're having a diabetic reaction? Those are medical issues that need to be managed in order to avoid a nursing home. So those are the 6 conditions, and I hope that this information is helpful to you, and I hope beyond anything else that this is information that you can take back and to your caregiving situation as a confident caregiver and start to implement that and say, okay, can we make this work? What are the things that put someone at risk, and how do we prioritize that? That's your 6 things to prioritize. As we did with our first show, we're going to end with a funny quote because we want to take ourselves a little more lightly as a certified laughter leader. We want to make sure that we enjoy some happiness for the physiological as well as psychological benefits of humor. So my 91-year-old friend who is a World War II veteran, his name is Jack, and he's reminded me that Milton Berle said this: you know you're getting old when you're sitting in a rocker and you can't get it started. So, ha 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 ha. That's the end of our show this time. You can certainly subscribe to this YouTube channel. You can also follow me on Instagram and Facebook. On Instagram, it's Pamela.Atwood. And here, obviously, it's Pamela Atwood. It's Pamela Christ Atwood on Facebook. You'll find me, though. And if you have other questions, you can always leave a comment here. Give me a topic that you want us to cover. We'll cover it. And we're going to do some guest shows, too. So that'll be a lot of fun, too. Once we figured out our technology and everything, we'll get some guests in here and do some really dynamic shows for you. And Aging Care Academy. Our website is www.agingcareacademy.org. So until our next show, I'm Pamela Atwood, and I thank you all for watching.